Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. Well, stay tuned for an interview you don't want to miss. It's my special interview with Pennsylvania's senior United States Senator Arlen Specter, and then our popular financial literacy update after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, Congress remains in session, taking up some of the most hotly debated subjects of our time. Immigration, we'll talk a little bit about the budget. How's the president doing? Senator Specter, as always, thanks for coming on the program.
Great pleasure to be with you. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, you know you're always welcome on this program. Well, look, let's go to maybe one of the tougher issues you've had to deal with since 1980. You've been in the Senate. You're our longest-serving United States Senator, elected or appointed. Used to be appointed, now it's both. But let me go to immigration is a tough topic. It sort of tore up the conservative base of your party. Particularly, we have this whole subject of whether or not border security can be guaranteed and whether this bill does that. What's your sense about that?
I think that border security can be guaranteed. That's the starting point.
Right.
The starting point is that we are not controlling our border. We do not have the rule of law. We have many people coming into this country who are not authorized to be here. And the first thing we're going to do is to do our best to make the border secure. That means a lot of fencing. It means additional border patrol. And it means employer verification so that we know who is legal and who is not legal. We now have foolproof systems so that we can hold an employer responsible. No matter how tight border security is, you can't stop everyone if there's a magnet for jobs. But now, with foolproof identification, it is fair to say to the employer, if you hire illegals, there's going to be a tough penalty. And repeated offenders, increased penalties, and even jail.
Yeah, the critics, let me just go to some of the heart of the criticism, is that since 1986, there have been these tough penalties which have not been enforced by the federal government. Employers still hire illegal aliens with virtually no legal penalties attached. Are you convinced, given what you've just said, that the federal government is serious this time about prosecuting employers who hire illegal aliens?
I am, because we have $4.4 billion on the table to do the job.
Yeah.
It is true that the 1986 law was not enforced, and that was the fault of Republicans and Democratic administrations. Reagan, Bush 1, Clinton, and Bush 2. But now, for the first time, we have a foolproof identification system. So it is possible, really, to have employer verification when added to border security, I think, to do the job.
Yeah. One of the things that, look, we have, whatever the exact numbers, this is 12 million just for the sake of our discussion, illegal immigrants in the country right now. It isn't possible to send 12 million people back anywhere. You fundamentally agree with it. We just can't. We're not moving 12 million people.
There's no doubt about that, and the people who complain about amnesty have a point.
Yeah.
But the issue is, what are we going to do with them? We're trying to put every requirement we can think of before you can become a citizen, like paying back taxes, paying a fine, learning English, being a part of the community. I'm totally opposed to the amnesty issue myself. But what we have with 12 million people here is silent amnesty. And also, we have a lot of criminals in that group, and we may have terrorists in that group. The attack on Fort Dix recently, 6 men, 3 of them were illegal immigrants from Yugoslavia. So what we're really battling on this bill is what is the best approach. And we may not get a bill.
Let me ask you one more question before we go to a break and on to another subject. One of the concerns is that local governments, sanctuary cities, will simply avoid the law and do what they're doing now, even if you pass these tougher sanctions on employers and on illegal immigrants. What do you think about that?
Well, when you have a city or a state and some 50 subdivisions of local governments have legislated on the field, they can't control that.
Right.
A city or a state can't have border security. They really cannot deal with employer verification. It's a national problem. So it has to be approached on a national basis. Look, this business is a third rail. I said on the Senate floor when we started that anybody who touched this was going to lose political skin.
That's right.
But I'm the senior Republican on the Judiciary Committee, and it's my job to manage the bill. So I'm listening to all the complaints, and bear this in mind. It isn't only complaints on the amnesty issue.
Oh, I know, you're hearing them.
Senator Menendez doesn't like the bill because we're not sufficiently helpful to immigrants. We don't have enough chain immigration.
The criticism is coming from both the right and the left. That's
coming in all directions, and it's a political loser, but it's my pay grade.
All right, on that note, we'll take a quick break. I want to ask the Senator how President Bush is doing given some of the problems he's faced in recent months, maybe months. How about a couple of years? It's been a tough couple of years for President Bush. We'll be back after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to my Pennsylvania Newsmakers and my special interview with Senator Arlen Specter. Senator, let's talk about the President's approval rating. It's 30, below 30. That's, do you approve, disapprove? Congress has dropped even lower in a couple of latest polls. What's your sense about where President Bush stands? I know you are for him, not for him. I mean, he's your president. You're a Republican. You vote with him and against him. I mean, you're pretty much the maverick independent guy you've been since you were elected. What's your sense about where he stands?
My sense is that he's doing reasonably well. It's traditional in the last 2 years of an 8-year presidency to have some problems in the polls. But I think President Bush has something to show for his tenure in office. We got confirmed Chief Justice Roberts at the age of 50, a remarkable thing to have a man in that position. We have Justice Alito confirmed at the age of 55, 2 men with very strong academic and professional records. They will anchor the court for a long, long time, and that is quite a legacy. And I chaired the Judiciary Committee and led the way. We were credited with having dignified hearings. We had some outbursts from Senator Kennedy once he forgot who the chairman was.
And we talked about, by the way.
I had to remind him. I asked him if he was serious with his objection. Why didn't he mention it in the court or in the gym? And jokingly said he hadn't been in the gym since the Johnson administration. That's the Andrew Johnson administration.
Yeah, we won't say if he looks it or not. We'll leave that for others. All right, well, let's turn to one of the subjects that the President has, I think, had the most difficult with. And there's no doubt that your party lost control of Congress because of this issue. It's, in a sense, the defining moment of the issue of 2006. It's likely to be the defining issue of 2008. Likely. We'll have to see. Is the surge working?
Well, so far, it's too soon to tell. Listen, had we known that Saddam did not have weapons of mass destruction, we wouldn't have gone in.
Right.
But now, once in, we don't really want to leave Iraq in a state of chaos. And I'll tell you this, up close, the President is very, very worried, and understandably so, about what will happen if we leave, and if we leave it in turmoil. Up close, the President is a very different persona from what comes across in the news media. Up close, he's engaged, he's with it, he's knows his subject matter. He called a group of us in recently to talk about the situation in Iraq, and he's very concerned about what will happen if he leaves in turmoil.
Do you think that we need to continue this presence here at least until the fall, is when most people say, and some consideration should be given to whether the surge is really working?
He's funded through September, and in September, when we come to the full year's appropriation bill, there's going to be a very critical analysis of it. There's been a lot of opposition by certain forces, candidly the Democrats, who don't want to fund it. So we will see what the progress has been.
And that's caught up in the presidential campaign and the Democrats, and
the Democratic nominees are outdoing themselves to disagree with the president, but you'd expect that.
I'm going to turn to another subject, something you know as much about as anyone with your frequent visits to the Middle East. We got Israel with a really serious problem on its hands with Hamas's control of Gaza. In a sense, we have sort of Fatah in the West Bank, Gaza under Hamas, no doubt still taking orders from either Syria and or Iran, funded by them. This is a very, very serious problem. Just last week, President Bush said, he's lifting the embargo of aid on Fatah, and maybe that's not been a good thing. I mean, maybe they're looking at that saying, what we don't need is overt American help at this moment. What's your assessment of that situation?
Very perilous for the region and for the world. Mm-hmm. You have a very fragile ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel. You have Hamas firing rockets into southern Israel. You have Fatah and Hamas involved in a war. And what has to be done is there has to be a negotiating party for the Palestinians.
Right.
And when Hamas made an offer to meet over the past weekend and Fatah turned them down, I thought that was a bad situation. Fatah turned them down because they're going to Egypt to talk to the United States and the Egyptian. Well, they ought to talk to Hamas first. And Hamas has to get off this kick about wanting to destroy Israel. The Palestinian Liberation
Order. Will they
order,
ever change that?
Well, the PLO finally did.
Well, that's true. That's true.
It's a matter of negotiation.
It is expected that within weeks, if not days, that Israel will retaliate and take them on in a full-scale war. Is that? Well,
that is always a possibility, and it is very undesirable for Israel and very undesirable for the region and for the world. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice invited a group of us in just a few days ago, and she has a negotiating plan, but I think she's got to be a lot more aggressive about it.
Okay, you're listening to and watching Pennsylvania Newsmakers with Senior Senator Arlen Specter. We'll continue this interview after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association, Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money, and by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education, 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers and my special interview with Senior U.S. Senator Arlen Specter. Senator, let's talk about, I'm going to go to a domestic issue in the remaining time we have in this segment and in the program with you. And I want to talk a little bit about stem cell, the federal funding of stem cell research, very controversial. President, getting by his vetoes on continued funding, not easy. Where is this all? And I know you're a very strong supporter of the funding of embryonic stem cells. You'll correct me if I'm wrong.
I am.
Go ahead.
My position is that if these embryos would be adopted and would produce life, that we would never want to use them for experimental purposes. And I've taken the lead for the appropriation of $4 million to encourage adoption and to pay for administrative and medical costs. But so far, only a very small number have been adopted, and we have some 400,000 of them which are frozen, and eventually they're going to have to be discarded as time passes. And the scientists tell us that they are very valuable for medical research. Now, you have other stem cells, adult stem cells and cord blood, but they are not as good, the scientists tell us. And we have so many people suffering from Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and heart disease and cancer, and these embryonic stem cells have the potential to go into a person's body and to replace a disease cell. So my point is that since they're not going to produce life, we ought to use them to save lives.
You know, it was my understanding in the legislation that was recently debated that the legislation for embryonic cells would cover those that were scheduled for destruction at fertility clinics, and that obviously, you know, the president's not going to go along with that. But in addition to that, in the executive order that he issued, there was no federal funding for any, was my understanding, stem cell research at all. Is that your understanding?
Well, that's correct. And bear this in mind. There are very strong pro-life senators like Senator Orrin Hatch, who favor it. And Mrs. Nancy Reagan is very much in favor of it. And the legacy of her husband, who died of Alzheimer's, and I've had a chance to talk to Mrs. Reagan about that. And she feels very strongly that this stem cell research could provide a cure for Alzheimer's. But bear in mind that this is not a traditional division on pro-choice, pro-life. Many strong pro-life advocates say if they're not going to produce life, then use them to save lives.
Okay. All right, that's it. That's our special interview. We'll be back in a moment with our popular financial literacy update. Senator, as always, I want to thank you. You'll come back soon and give us an update maybe in September. You'll take a little break if you can get this immigration bill through, and then you'll come back in the fall and we'll have another discussion.
It's a great pleasure to be with you. You're a first-class journalist interviewer. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Builders Association, building today for a better tomorrow. And by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Well, it's time for our popular financial literacy update. Joining me, as often is the case, is Mike Wishnow. He's Senior Vice President of the Credit Union Association of Pennsylvania. Do I got that right? Yeah. I always put the Pennsylvania first. People do that all the time.
It's usually Pennsylvania Credit Union Association.
But our viewers know. They know what we're talking about. Joined by Toni Montgomery, who is with AmeriChoice Federal Credit Union. Do I got that right?
That is correct.
See, I'm getting better at this. All right, no, let's go to the heart of it. This month we're going to talk about the Credit Youth Ambassador Contest. Is that right?
Yeah.
And Toni, you run this program. You're the ambassador.
Yes, I actually won the competition.
You won the competition?
Yes.
All right, now tell me what the competition is about.
It is a state competition where youth ages 17 to 25 compete. And what they do is it's all about youth financial literacy and getting the message of credit unions out to America's youth, Pennsylvania's youth.
Okay, now, Michael, we've talked a lot about these programs for financial literacy updates. In a sense, it's the message that you deliver monthly. Let's talk. Why don't you sort of summarize the whole message of why this financial literacy update is important?
Well, frankly, Terry, financial education is vital from the youngest of ages throughout every stage of life. And in Toni's case, she's our youth ambassador. What better person to deliver the message of financial education to youth than somebody who looks a whole lot younger than you or I?
Oh, I won't go there, but I understand, and we won't go there. All right, so what does this mean? I mean, what is it that you're doing now? One of the things we've done on this program is that Michael and other guests have come on. We've talked about, you know, for all ranges of folks, but lately a lot of emphasis has been on young people. Why is it particularly important for young people?
Well, one of the major importance to it is that today's youth are tomorrow's credit union members. Right. They're the people who are going to be opening the accounts. They're the ones who are going to be buying homes. They need to know how to use credit cards. They need to know how to budget now so they can be financially responsible adults.
What's National Youth Week? It was celebrated in April. We didn't talk about that on this program, did we?
We did not. We did not.
See, now I pay attention to what you're doing. Explain that. What's that?
Well, National Youth Week is in April. It is part of National Youth Financial Education Week, which we talked a little bit about.
We do that.
Right.
Right.
And really what it's designed to do is to get youth engaged in financial matters, learning about financial subjects. I think, Toni, you went into schools that month and talked.
Yeah.
Great experience. We went into schools, we taught budgeting, we taught savings, we taught how to use credit cards to today's youth.
Right. And we've debated, you know, as a professor for many years, we've often been debating what should be in the curriculum, you know, the curricular offerings, and there's so many things that pressure, you know, professors and teachers, obviously, at all levels of our education system. And this is one subject that somehow we have to find, I always thought we have to find a way, whether we do it formally or the work that you do, you know, augment the regular work. But, I mean, there's complete agreement that it has to be done some way, somehow. And, Michael, you're filling that void at the moment. Is that
Absolutely.
Is that pretty much the way to
We're filling it. Folks like Toni are filling it. And you're right, Terry. The way to teach it is around everything else that's taught. Not to make it another new subject, but to teach it around math, to teach it around consumer science, to teach it around economics, those kinds of things.
I noticed that one of the organizations that you partner with is Junior Achievement. I'll put a plug in because I think the Junior Achievement programs are great. And I guess they operate in almost every county and they do great work. How does that work with the Junior Achievement involvement? Have you had that personally?
I have. I've had the opportunity to personally volunteer in the classroom as a Junior Achievement volunteer. I work with second graders, teaching them about their community, how money works in their community. I've also had the opportunity to teach a budgeting lesson at the Young Women's Symposium the Junior Achievement hosts.
All right. We have about a minute left. Let's talk about what's on par. What are you going to do for next year? What's coming up? Are you going to continue to are you going to represent the credit unions in the state nationally, or is it going to involve a lot of personal travel for you?
I'm going to be representing the credit unions in the state of Pennsylvania. I'm actually going to be headed to the National Youth Involvement Board Conference in San Antonio next month to represent Pennsylvania credit unions and bring back the youth financial literacy message.
That's great. I guess you have everybody on the staff there who wants to go to San Antonio. It's actually a great place. Well, look, this is another great update. Thanks for coming on the program, and good luck in your career.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and stay well.